Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming, guys. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching me on YouTube, on Rumble, on X, and on Facebook. I see that one of the commentators say Israel in big trouble. That's what you guys always say. Until this very day, nothing significant happened to Israel. And I respectfully disagree with you, my friend. And today's live streaming is going to be about this case, but not about all the things that happened with Israel, but rather one of the newer, I would say, actions that have been taken against Israel, and that is the application for arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant. And those are everything that happened after the October 7 are very important. And if you want me to tell you in short why Israel in trouble, okay. First things first, Israel is built, in my opinion, on three main pillars. The first pillar is the strong military. And the military can present or provide what is called safe haven for all the Jewish people around the world, right? However, the military, when you have a strong military, you deter your enemies from conducting any sort of attacks against you, because if your enemies attack you, then you are able to attack them back 10 times 10 folds more. And if they fire one rocket, you fire 100 rockets. If they shell with one artillery shell, you fire 100 artillery shells against you. So there was a strong deterrence between Israel vis-a-vis its enemies. This has crumbled after the October 7 when Hamas attacked the Israeli settlements. And I'm not in support, I'm not saying that I support this or that, I'm analyzing here what happened. So Israel lost its deterrence vis-a-vis Hamas, and Hamas is a smaller, let's say, military group against the Israeli occupation forces. In northern Israel, where the Israeli occupation forces are engaged in acts of hostilities against Hezbollah, which is a bigger military group in the region, there are around 200,000 Israeli settlers who have been displaced and forced to leave the northern settlements and had to be displaced, become an internally displaced people. And they went to the central parts of Israel. And nowadays, the Israeli government cannot restore the stability in the north and also on the enclave of Gaza. Therefore, all these settlers, and especially those who came from outside, let's say from the United States, from Europe, from Russia, from Ukraine, etc., Poland, Germany, they're unable to go to their homes. So the military might that Israel have, right, they're not able to translate this into a deterrence. They are unable to deter their enemies, the smaller ones and the medium-sized ones and the bigger one, and that is, for example, Iran. Historically, Iran and Israel, they have been engaged into some proxy warfare and indirect, let's say, engagement politically, diplomatically, militarily, intelligence. Israel assassinates someone, they don't recognize it, but when Israel attacked the Iranian embassy consulate in Damascus and killed senior Iranian officials, military officials, then the Iranian side retaliated and they have targeted the targets that they wanted to bomb. And this was the message to Israel that despite your military might and despite all the air defenses that you have, and despite the American participation, British participation, French participation, Jordanian participation, and intelligence participation of other actors in the region, I am able to hit you. So deterrence, unfortunately for the Israeli government, it's gone. They are unable to deter their enemies. This is number one, right? So when you have a military power, you create deterrence. So they lost this deterrence. And the second pillar that I mentioned, which is a safe haven for the Jewish people, and those two factors are interconnected, Israel is not a safe haven for the Jewish people. Jewish people are safer in the United States at the current moment, right? Jewish people are safer in Poland, in Germany, in Russia, not in Ukraine, but probably. In Syria, they are safer, for example. In Lebanon, they are safer, right? So as much as this war continues, this will normalize the feeling and the sentiments among the Jewish people that Israel is not a safe haven anymore. And this war has been going on for over 7 months, and Israel had not been engaged for 7 month long warfare in the past, right? In this intensity. So these two factors are very, very important for Israel, and they're enabled to impose and enforce on their enemies. One, deterrence, and the second, safe haven for the Jewish people. Now, the only weapon that Israel has that can deter its enemies from an all-out war, and that is the nuclear weapons, right? Israel has over 200 nuclear warheads, and if you watch the Israeli press, if you watch the Israeli officials, and if you listen to what they speak, the military experts, they are no longer referring to their military, the IDF, for example, as the main deterrent factor of their military. And now, after the October 7th, they keep speaking about the nuclear weapons. So Israel lost this deterrence, and the only thing they have is nuclear weapon. And if I'm saying, I was having this conversation the other day with myself, because how do I come to conclusions and analysis? Sometimes I just put scenarios in my head and I speak to myself, what happened with this helicopter crash, right? The other day when I hosted our friend Ihsan from Iran, I didn't want to ask him about the conspiracy theories, because they are still conspiracy theories, and I don't want to go into that at the moment. I don't think it's the right moment to speak if this was a foul game or not. What happened with the Iranian president when his blood is still on the ground. He is not yet in the grave, right? They didn't bury him yet. So I didn't want to ask this type of questions. But when I was thinking about it, and I did some research, and I watched, for example, what the assistant of the president, Raisi, said. He was with him in a different helicopter, and what Professor Marandi said. Both of them agree on one thing, that the weather was good, and there were no warnings that the weather will be catastrophic, and it will lead into such sort of catastrophe. So there was nothing, no warnings, and they departed from Azerbaijan, flying to Iran. And in my research, I found out that, for example, Israel has built what is called smart villages on the borders between Iran and Azerbaijan. And I'm not saying this is the reason. I'm just saying those are scenarios in my mind, right? So what are these smart villages about? I don't know much about them, and there are no lots of details. But we know, I know, you know, everybody knows that there is the technology to manipulate the weather, right? And this could be used for good purposes, and it could be used for bad purposes. So I don't know. I'm just saying, if this was a foul game, Iranians are not hot-headed people. They have created the chess. They play very slowly, and they want to win every battle at once. They don't go like into full-out war, and they're not hot-headed. They're not driven by testosterone, right? So in my opinion, if I'm saying, just for an argument's sake, if this was a foul game and the Israelis were involved in this, the Iranians are going to build their first nuclear weapon. They're not going to attack Israel. They're not going to kill the prime minister of Israel. They don't work that way. They're going to build their first nuke. This is in my opinion. They will just change their nuclear doctrine, and they will build their first nuclear weapon. And in my estimation, they are 6 months to 1 year away from officially building a nuclear weapon, because some people keep telling me that, oh, they already have. I don't know. Nobody knows. Americans don't know. The Israelis don't know. Nobody knows. But in the official numbers that we have, I think they have enriched the uranium to 60%. If they can enrich it to 80%, this could take another 6 months. Then they are able to build a nuclear weapon, right? So this is the logical conclusion, in my opinion, if there was a foul game in this case. So if Iran now builds a nuclear weapon, then Israel will lose not only its conventional deterrence but its nuclear deterrence. So let's see. One, the military power that can bring first deterrence and safe haven for the Jewish people, these two are gone. The only thing that is left is foreign support. And the foreign support, foreign military support, foreign financial support from the United States, from Great Britain, from Germany, Italy, somehow, and some other governments. And this is coming into a crossroads with all these cases against Israel in the ICJ. When Germany came in defense of Israel, Nicaragua took Germany to the ICJ. And now with the ICC, this is going to become another big issue because now Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, when the official arrest warrants are issued, he cannot leave Israel. If he goes to any other country that is signatory of the Rome Statute, he will be arrested. And here comes the real problem, because for Israel, it has been always that their allies will unconditionally support them. But their allies now, they're looking for a scapegoat, because what's happening in the Gaza Strip is scandal. For everyone, for the Americans, for the Brits, for the Germans, it's a scandal. And they know it's a scandal. So they're looking for a scapegoat, and they're going to sacrifice Netanyahu in this situation and say this was Netanyahu's fault, right? And he can stay in Israel. He will not leave his country, etc., etc. But I think he will be prosecuted anyways for corruption charges and other things in his own country. So all these issues against Israel and the shift in the public opinion, those are important factors. You cannot really underestimate and say, nothing is happening to Israel. No, it is happening. I know that the killing still continues, unfortunately, but this killing now has repercussions, consequences, and I truly believe, this is my conviction, I can be wrong, and you are correct in this, my friend, I don't know, that Israel cannot recover from this. The amount of violence that they have perpetrated in the Gaza Strip, it will not be erased. We have the data, we have the video, we have the footage, we have the documents, we have the reports, we have eyewitnesses, we have documents, we have everything, right? Everything is documented. And in this era, nothing will be erased from the memories. And myself, just one person here on Syriana Analysis, I promise you that I will never stop speaking about this case. If all the people forget about it, I will keep speaking about it and remind the people, because they have to be punished for what they did to the Palestinians, and not only after the October 7th, right? This has been going on for 75 years. And there has to be consequences for these actions. And this is going to happen, in my opinion, during the shift, and it's happening from a unipolar world into multipolar world. So the people need to understand that this shift is slow, but we can already see it with our objective eyes, and we can sense it, and we can see the new structures, the economic, financial structures, political structures that are being either reformed or reconstructed, right? And during this time, when the United States is no longer the superpower, the absolute superpower, which guarantees all this financial and military support to Israel. So take a scenario: if the United States crumbles, or not crumbles, receives a severe economic crisis, this is going to have consequences on Israel. And regardless of what they say in Israel, because Israeli officials are like, oh, we're an independent country and we don't need support from here and there. That's complete BS. You know that, because the United States gives most of the weapons to Israel. They don't have the production and the factories and the money and the equipment to continue and sustain in this conflict. Without the United States, Israel cannot continue this war. So what happens if there is a big economic crash in the United States and the US dollar receives a major blow? Ask yourself this question. Do you think that the Russians or the Chinese, who are the new two poles rising in this unipolar world, are going to come and present themselves as a protector of Israel? No, that's not going to happen. Of course, they will try to ensure that there is no chaos and bloodshed against the Jewish people there, for example. But I don't see that Chinese and the Russians are going to present themselves as a replacement to the United States in the case of Israel. So That's why I say Israel is in trouble. I hope that I answered to your question. I had so much, by the way, program scheduled now to start one by one, and now but that I saw your comment, I wanted to address this case because I come from a geopolitical place, and my understanding of West Asia or the Middle East, I'm from the region, and I assure you, my friend, that Israel is in trouble. With the factors that, due to the factors that I mentioned here. So, what's happening, guys, in the world? Now I have to delete some of the posts that I wanted to show you for today because we're going to address this case particularly. One of the major allies of Israel is Germany, right? Where I am living at the current moment. And according to the German government, they are going to implement the order of the ICC when there is arrest warrants against the Israeli officials. So Germany confirms it would arrest Netanyahu. A spokesperson for the German chancellor confirmed the German authorities would arrest Netanyahu if he enters the country amid a proposed arrest warrant by the ICC for war crimes. The stance has caused outrage in Israel, with many influential figures suggesting it marked another act of aggression by Germany on the Jewish people. Israel's ambassador to Germany, Ron Prosor, he says, quote, "The chief prosecutor equates a democratic government with Hamas, thereby demonizing and delegitimizing Israel and the Jewish people. This disgraceful political campaign could become a nail in the coffin for the West and its institutions." And see, this is the main sentence, in my opinion, the main statement. This campaign, he says, it could become a nail in the coffin of the West and its institutions, because they consider all these institutions are built around their interests. So when they established the ICC and other organizations, in their minds, they wanted to use these institutions in their favor. They wanted to use them as tools against the countries and the governments and the people that they want to subjugate, right? And I'm coming to that, and I'm going to show you what the chief prosecutor of the ICC has said in this regard, because he was interviewed by the CNN recently. But let's first stay with Germany. This is the German government spokesperson, and this is a press conference. So Germany would arrest and extradite Netanyahu to the ICC. He says, "Of course, we adhere to law and order and to the international decisions of the International Criminal Court." I will show you this video, what he had to say in this
Wird sich die
regard.
Bundesregierung auf jeden Fall an die Entscheidung des Internationalen Strafgerichtshofs halten und diese Entscheidung umsetzen?
Wie Sie so schön formuliert haben, ist das eine hypothetische Frage. Deshalb nehme ich einen halben Schritt zurück und sage, grundsätzlich sind wir Unterstützer des Internationalen Strafgerichtshofes, und dabei bleibt es auch.
Wenn ich nochmal nachfragen darf, zur grundsätzlichen Unterstützung gehört ja, dass man Urteile des Internationalen Strafgerichtshofs dann auch ernst nimmt und umsetzt. Und deswegen meine Frage, das war jetzt gar nicht eine hypothetische, habe ich extra keine Namen genannt, sondern hält sich die Bundesregierung an das, was der Internationale Strafgerichtshof entscheidet?
Ich dachte, ich hätte durch meine normative Setzung die Frage beantwortet. Ansonsten, wenn Sie da noch Fragen haben, natürlich.
Also,
ja, wir halten uns an Recht und Gesetz.
I didn't expect that, to be honest with you. I didn't expect that the spokesperson of the German government, and I don't know if this is the official position of the government or he was cornered and he had to answer. I don't know. But I was very surprised that he said this, because there are other officials. And from this, I saw a comment and statement for a politician from the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, the former party of Merkel. I think his name is Kissenwetter, and he said that this is a political instrument. They have politicized the court and they instrumentalized it against Israel, and Germany shouldn't follow. I mean, he's not in the government, but I'm sure he speaks also for example, the FDP. I mean, the Greens are very pro-Israel. The Social Democrats are very pro-Israel. The Freie Democratic, almost all the parties in Germany are very pro-Israel. So I really suspect, and I don't know if they would really enforce that. In any case, if there is an arrest warrant, and that could come very soon, I'm sure that Netanyahu will not leave Israel again in his life. He will stay there, and he will probably end up in jail due to the charges that I already told you about against him in Israel. So this is another hypocrite, another warmonger, another what to say? I mean, this guy is. There is no other word that he. There is no war in the world that he dislikes. He likes all the wars. He likes selling weapons. And he is from the deep state. He is close to the military-industrial complex, Senator Lindsey Graham. He is a receiver of AIPAC money for around $1 million. So Lindsey Graham receives an unexpected applause after stating he fears the ICC will come for U.S. Congress people after Netanyahu. He says, if they will do this to Israel, we're next. Anti-war protesters applaud there. Yeah, you can clap all you want, he replied. Take a look.
So we, hopefully, together will find a way to rest our displeasure with the ICC, because if they'll do this to Israel, we're next. This group tried to come after our soldiers. Yeah, you can clap all you want to. They tried to come after our soldiers in Afghanistan, but reason prevailed. So at the end of the day here, what I hope to happen is that we level sanctions against the ICC for this outrage to not only help our friends in Israel, but protect ourselves over time. Mr. Secretary, your statement yesterday was excellent. The president's statement was excellent. Senator Schumer's statement on the floor was excellent about the outrage here. They have destroyed the notion of complementarity. They have misled people in the United States Senate about their intention, and they shall and will pay a price. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate what you've said. It is now time for us to act. Thank you.
So not only Israel is in trouble, but American congressmen and congresswomen could be in trouble. And I will tell you something about this. Do you know that there is a law in the United States called the American Service Members Protection Act, or called the Hague Invasion Act? So I will show you. This is from, by the way, Wikipedia. So this is something called American Service Members Protection Act, right? And this has been adopted in 2002, in August 2002, right? And this authorization led to the act being colloquially nicknamed the Hague Invasion Act, as the act allows the president to order U.S. military actions such as an invasion of the Netherlands, where the Hague is located, to protect American officials and military personnel from prosecution or rescue them from custody. So this is the rules-based order, guys, right? If the ICC issues arrest warrant against any American official or military personnel or any American, and this person could be detained or prosecuted, the American government or the American president has the authority to order his military to invade a friendly country, an allied country like the Netherlands, to rescue the Americans from The Hague. Those are the ones who keep telling us about the rules-based order and all this stuff, right? So I wanted to show you these things because it's important for us to understand the mentality of the American side and the hypocritical preach about the rules-based order and all this stuff, right? And just like I told you about Lindsey Graham, this is Lindsey Graham, guys. If you are an American, you should know that he received $1 million and $580 from the Israel lobby in total. I don't really know how is this even legal in any sense of imagination, to be honest with you. And he was really butt-burned about the that Spain, Ireland, and Norway have recognized Israel as an independent state. And this is what he had to say.
Apparently today or yesterday, the countries of Ireland, Spain, and Norway recognized a Palestinian state. Here's my question. Who's in charge of the state? Who's running the place? And what are its boundaries? Did you recognize Hamas being in charge of Gaza? Do you want to keep the PA as we know it now in the West Bank as old and corrupt? What did you recognize? These are allies, but they need to hear from a friend what you did is reprehensible. You're rewarding terrorism. On October the 7th, Hamas attacked the state of Israel and murdered 1,200 innocent people, put babies in ovens, raped women, set people on fire, and recorded it all. And your response is to create a Palestinian state. You're rewarding terrorism. Apparently today.
So, of course, despite all these BS allegations that he said, which there are very credible reports and investigations about these cases, debunking all these claims, and especially the decapitated babies, burning them in ovens, and the systematic rape, etc., etc. I'm really sick and tired of speaking about these cases, and there are better people who have debunked these cases. But since we are speaking about the recognition of the state of Palestine, so this is the international community, guys. The green is the international community, in my opinion. Those are the ones who recognize the state of Palestine, and you see they are the majority of the world. And even in Europe, they started recognizing the state of Palestine. And who is not recognizing? The United States, Greenland, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, I don't know, some other countries in Europe, etc., etc., Great Britain. Most of the world, around 150 countries, they recognize the state of Israel, state of Palestine. And so it's not the Palestinians who are isolated. It's the Israelis who are isolated now. That's why this is one of the things that we have to take into consideration, my friend, that I replied to your comment at the beginning of this live streaming, right? Israel is in trouble, you see? All these factors are playing against them. But we have a United States coming and saying that there is a consensus in the United States that they will support sanctions against the ICC. So the administration of President Joe Biden will work with Congress on possible sanctions against the International Criminal Court after its prosecutor announced it was seeking arrest warrants for senior Israeli and Hamas officials, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday. Congressional Republicans have signaled they plan to introduce legislation that will impose costs on the court for its decision and are expected to force a vote on a measure that could lay bare the division with the Democrats over the Israel-Hamas war. So this is the rules-based order. This is what they are doing. But this is going to be, this is only going to accelerate the shift to a multipolar world. And this is something that I mentioned yesterday actually, with our friend and colleague Alex Rubinstein, when I hosted him and we spoke about Georgia and other cases. And this is what I said, because this hypocrisy and double standard will only accelerate this shift to multipolar world. Take a look.
So, I mean, I just, and you look at the scale of destruction, you look at the pictures of Gaza versus, cities in Ukraine. And you see that the style of warfare that's being conducted by Russia versus Israel is quite different. And that's not to justify war in any way or like pick a side, but to point out that there is not really an equivalency there. And yet, for all the complaining that happened, all the protests by Western politicians about how awful Russia's actions have been, you hear nothing but crickets when it comes to Gaza. And it's a real tragedy because the scale of destruction is so much greater.
Indeed. And do you agree with the notion that this type of double standards and hypocrisy by the Western leaders is accelerating the shift to the multipolar world? Why? Because the multipolar world is not only a political multipolarity. It's not like the leaders of other countries are working on multipolarity, but also the conviction of the people around the world. Worldwide, you have public opinion matters. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had all these media outlets and all these propaganda machines trying to wash the brains of the people. They need the people's consent about some major issues. And the people I would argue, especially in the global south, they are encouraged now, emboldened, and they see through all these manipulation tactics, all these double standards, and they are willfully agreeing to become part of a multipolar world and accelerate this move alongside China and Russia. They are losing the people's minds and hearts in the global south, and those are the majority of the people in favor of China and Russia. And the Chinese and the Russians, they're just not doing, they're not doing anything in this regard. They're not like going and convincing the people to like them. They're just letting the Americans continue in this suicidal mission in Palestine and in different places around the world. And beside this, people, for example, in the United States, the campus protesters, this is one example. People are also waking up, especially the younger generation in the United States. Like, if the American establishment is lying about Gaza, have they also lied about Libya? Have they lied also about Syria? Have they lied about also X and Y and Z? And we have to remember, many of the so-called progressives in the United States, they were in support of these policies of the establishment in these countries, because it's a revolution, because it's an uprising, it's against dictatorship, this and that. Now you see it's like a mass awakening. I don't see that things are heading toward a place that serves the American interests. Everything looks like bleak for the American establishment. So this is my opinion. I just want to thank Brock McLachlan. Thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. Guys, if you want to support Syriana Analysis, there are different ways. You can simply just like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends. Or if you want to do more and support this work, for example, you can become a patron. You can see the link in the description. You can become a member of YouTube. This is a premium membership also on of my channel. There are different means in the description below. It's like buy me a coffee and PayPal and stuff. This YouTube channel is 100% independent, and it's just funded by the followers of Syriana Analysis. And I do this exclusively for YouTube and Rumble and my profiles, and for educational purposes, and in order to build bridges with different people around the world and try to enlighten them about these different geopolitical conflicts from my perspective, because I have an experience in this. I have studied it and also been through war in Syria. So I'm presenting this humble content and in the most professional way possible to you guys. And I don't work for major media outlets or big media outlets, and I don't receive funding from anyone or anywhere. So the only way that I can finance my work is the revenues of YouTube, which is very little, and the support of the Syriana Analysis followers. So thank you so much, guys, in advance. So you remember I told you that the court, the Western officials, they perceive the court as a kangaroo court, right? They see the ICC as a tool against the poorer countries, against the people in the Middle East or Africa. And this is the chief prosecutor of the ICC on the CNN. This is only recently, a few days ago, with, I forgot her name now. He says this court is built for Africa, not for Israel and the West. This is what Western politicians told the ICC prosecutor just about he recommended an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. Take a look.
Be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't view it like that. This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will. And we're going to simply be, we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end we have to fulfill our responsibilities as prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry, to be very...
I'm, to be honest, surprised, because he is very close to the American circles and American establishment. I'm surprised with his bravery, and I don't know what's behind this, but he received lots of threats now from American officials, congressmen, congresswomen. They're threatening him with sanctions. I'm sure they're threatening his family now. And they're doing everything they can to stop this process and the application against Israel. And despite that, he declared that there is an application submitted now. So let's see when he will declare the arrest warrant against Netanyahu and Gallant, when that's going to happen. But while I was researching about this case, I came across this article today by Alfred de Zayas. Alfred de Zayas is a former senior UN expert who was a guest on Syriana Analysis, by the way. And he published this. He says, ICC case against Ursula von der Leyen before the ICC for complicity in war crimes and crimes against humanity. So today, he says the International Criminal Court has been officially called to investigate Ursula von der Leyen for complicity. Reasonable grounds exist to believe that the unconditional support of the President of the European Commission to Israel, military, economic, diplomatic, and political, has enabled war crimes and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. I haven't seen this on other media outlets, but Alfred de Zayas is very connected, and he's expert in international humanitarian law, and he just published this, and I made a video about it. Take a look. I came across this article today on the website of the former UN expert Alfred de Zayas, which says that a communication has been submitted to the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, setting forth in detail through facts and evidence that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the current president of the European Commission, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, a national of Germany, is complicit in a number of violations of international humanitarian law, amounting to crimes within the jurisdiction of the ICC, committed by the Israeli armed forces against Palestinian civilians in the occupied Palestinian territory, including the Gaza Strip. This communication, endorsed by various human rights groups and prominent academics and experts in international criminal law, calls for the prosecutor to initiate investigations on the basis of the information provided against Ursula von der Leyen. The communication provides a detailed account of how Ursula von der Leyen bears personal criminal responsibility and is subject to punishment for various war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide committed by the Israeli armed forces in the occupied Palestinian territories. According to the communication, it is evident that she has actively supported, aided, and facilitated the commission of these crimes, including providing the necessary means for their execution as defined in Article 25 of the Rome Statute of the ICC. In her role as President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen has become complicit in violating Articles 6, 7, and 8 of the Rome Statute through both her affirmative actions and omissions, says the communication. As the President of the European Commission, von der Leyen has taken positive actions towards Israel, including military support, economic and financial aid, diplomatic backing, and political support. Additionally, the EU refrained from suspending the EU-Israel Association Agreement and introduced new cooperation mechanisms during the Israeli assault on Gaza. Diplomatic support was extended to Israel following Prime Minister Netanyahu's request for international backing to continue the campaign. This support has been linked to alleged war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide committed by the IDF in Gaza since October 7, according to the communication. Mrs. von der Leyen's unwavering statements of support for Israel have bolstered morale among IDF members involved in actions against Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territories. The President of the European Commission was aware of being involved in the commission of the relevant crimes by assisting and supporting. With the widespread coverage of the violations of international humanitarian law by the IDF in the Gaza Strip, particularly since October 2023, and the abundance of official United Nations reports and documents, it is clear that von der Leyen cannot deny her knowledge of these crimes. The communication says she should have taken all necessary steps to stop these crimes from happening and not contributed to them in any way, as she regrettably did. By choosing not to act, she becomes complicit in the omission. President von der Leyen had a legal obligation to act in such circumstances, as international law mandates that individuals in positions of public authority must protect human life. She possessed the means and ability to fulfill this duty, as demonstrated by the European Commission's actions in other situations, such as Ukraine, where they work to prevent war crimes and limit the capabilities of certain powers to engage in military operations. Had President von der Leyen fulfilled her legal duty instead of prioritizing Israel's freedom of action in the ongoing campaign, the likelihood and duration of these crimes would have been significantly reduced, the communication concluded. I don't know about you, but this seems like a big deal. The international law and rules-based order that these politicians used to pretend to respect and advocate are coming to haunt them due to their failure to protect human life in Palestine and unwavering support to the perpetrators of these heinous crimes against defenseless civilians. I recorded this video today in the morning without the hat. I see that some of the commentators were asking me where the hat is from. I really don't know what's the name of the shop, to be honest with you. Last year in July, I was in a German city called Essen in Western Germany, and I was staying at a friend's place, and under their apartment there was a shop where my wife went, and I went with her, and then I found this cap, and yeah, that's where I got it. I don't know what type of cap is that, but I just want to ask you something, guys, because Anna said I like Desires. He just did an interview with Neutrality Studies, and I follow the Neutrality Studies also. It's a very good channel. He hosts lots of big names, and I would like to ask this question because one of the hardest things for anyone who is managing a podcast like this is to find a guest and bigger names, right? And it's not like the name of the person is important. I'm hosting all sorts of people, but bigger names always bring more traffic to the channel and more people watch the videos, right? And this is one of the goals of any podcaster, to reach to more people and to become bigger and to be able to send messages to more people, for example, right? Or to build bridges with more people. So do you guys think that such podcasts have like what is called the interview producer, someone who is like booking these interviews for them? If you guys know someone who works as an interview producer or can bring four guests, let's say, per week, and if you know someone who works this and he can or she can bring very good guests for Syriana Analysis and who can offer cooperation with Syriana Analysis, let him or her send me an email. The email is on the official page, on the official YouTube channel of Syriana Analysis. You can find that, and send me an email and I will check if the offer is reasonable for me or not. So we addressed all the things that I wanted to address about today: Israel, Palestine, Gaza, and the ICC case against Israel. I just want to mention a few things about Ukraine, because Ukraine is still a very hot war and it's very dangerous, the situation in Ukraine still, unfortunately. And Ukraine asked the United States to lift ban on using American arms to strike at Russian territory. And the Ukrainian officials are trying to convince Washington to allow Kiev to strike at Russian territory with US-supplied weapons, saying the ban prevented them from attacking Russian troops amassing near Kharkiv Oblast, Politico reported on May 14th. Moscow's troops launched a new offensive into northeastern Kharkiv Oblast to the Russo-Ukrainian border on May 10th, with 30,000 troops reportedly involved in the operation. A group of Ukrainian parliamentarians is in Washington this week to mobilize support in the US Congress, saying that the ban prevented them from hitting Russian military depots across the border, the Politico wrote. Now, Blinken was asked about this only recently, and he gave, the answer indicates that the United States doesn't really mind now if Ukraine uses these weapons against the Russian targets inside Russia. And Blinken was in Ukraine only a few days ago, if you remember, I think 2 weeks ago. And this is what he had to say.
Zone that the Russians have created. And what they're doing is they're lining up all their artillery and rockets and missiles just across the Ukraine border that they then use to attack the Ukrainians. However, your administration and Jake Sullivan have restricted the arms use so that Ukraine cannot defend itself and fire back at Russia. That's why I mandated the ATACMS and the supplemental, the long range, short range, and the HIMARS, that your administration is tying their hands behind their back, not unlike what you're trying to do in Israel. Will you change this policy so Ukraine can fight without one hand tied behind its back.
Well, as you know, we've rallied 50 countries over the last 2 years to come to Ukraine's defense, to provide it with the weapons it needs to defend itself, to push back against Russian aggression. When it comes to enabling, endorsing attacks outside of Ukraine, that's not something we've done, but Ukraine will have to make and will make its own decisions, and I want to make sure it gets the equipment that it needs.
Well,
to
you know,
effectively defend
Congress
itself.
got them the equipment, and thank you for implementing that. But Congress did not put restrictions on the use of these weapons. It's Jake Sullivan and your administration that has put the restrictions on these weapons. And I talked to them, and this is not, they cannot achieve victory with these restrictions that you, not the Congress, have placed on them. And I hope you'll take that back to the National Security Advisor and the National Security Council and change this policy decision that is very dangerous and damaging to the Ukrainian people. My time has expired. I now recognize Mr.
So this is what Blinken said, right? They don't mind now that the Ukrainians hit Russian targets inside Russia. And Alex Christoforou says, scripted theater between Makol and Blinken. The decision was made many months ago. This is a performance with visual aids, preparing people for the next escalation, which will fail like all the wonder weapon escalations before it. 2 weeks ago, Blinken went to Kiev and stated that Ukraine can do as they wish with US weapons. Last week, Wall Street Journal said Biden White House was considering allowing Ukraine to use US weapons to hit Russia. 3 days ago, Nuland said US weapons should hit Russia. Yesterday, green t-shirt actor said he was negotiating to use weapons to hit inside. Green t-shirt actor means this Zelensky. Neocon New Lips have not realized that the slower this war goes, the faster the empire collapses. And Kim.com says Blinken now says it is okay for Ukraine to strike targets deep inside of Russia. Get ready for fireworks. Unfortunately, this type of rhetoric has become so normalized nowadays that many of the politicians in the West have become so delusional, and the level of the conversation has become too low, like too amateurish, I would argue, and not the smartest, the least to say, right? Like, for example, you have someone like this woman, Kaya Kallas. Like, I truly, if I was a citizen of her country and she's my prime minister, I would not be so proud, right? And I truly see that these people lack the proper intellectual capacity or the skills, the competence to lead their countries. And I'm truly truthful now with you. Like, these people are harming their own countries with this type of rhetoric, narratives, speech, childish speech, I would say. And this is her. She says, Russia's defeat is not so bad. Then change could really happen. There are many nations that are part of Russia. If there were more small states, this would not be so bad. It's not so bad if a big power becomes much smaller.
Russia's defeat is not a bad thing, because then there could be really a change in the society, and there are many different nations right now part of Russia as well. I think if you would have more like small nations, it's not a bad thing if the big power is actually much smaller. So.
It's like a child, like it's a bigger country is becoming a smaller country. It's like, what is this really? This is a performance of a leader of a country. This is illusions. This is not the job of a politician. You know what's the job of the politician? Is to secure the best interests of his and her people, and this wishful thinking ruining their own countries vis-a-vis Russia. And the problem is, people think that this is a pro-Russian talking point. It's not a pro-Russian talking point. You have to know the history of Russia. And the recent history of Russia, especially World War II and beyond. When the Russians came under existential threat, they have sacrificed millions of people from their own people, millions of people, 20 million people from their countrymen and women to defend their country against Nazi Germany. And when the Russians felt that the existential threat is becoming closer and closer through the expansion of NATO, they invaded Ukraine. And they're ready to sacrifice so much of their countrymen for the sake of preserving this, that Russia would stay untouched. And when this Kaya Kallas or whatever, see what she says? If Russia is defeated, it could be disintegrated into smaller states. Russia knows this. And they know in Russia, they're not stupid. They know the expansion of NATO, the purpose of the expansion of NATO, which I argued multiple times on Syriana Analysis, is to create a bridge. Why the Americans want to bring Ukraine into NATO? Very simple. They see Europe has 4 bridges: France, Germany, Poland, and Ukraine. And those countries are all on the same level, almost. Once the United States has an intelligence military presence in these countries, 4 of them, the continuity of the American geopolitical strong presence in these countries means when you are in Ukraine, you are projecting all your strength and power coming from all these countries into Ukraine, and from Ukraine, you're projecting it inside Russia. And once you project it inside Russia, you are able to destabilize Russia from within. And hence the Russians see and think and believe, and I think rightfully so, they think that way, that the American end game, end strategy in this Ukraine conflict is to divide Russia, the Russian Federation. That's why they went into an offensive war in Ukraine, to slice Ukraine or draw the line, so that NATO would not expand into Ukraine. This was the reason, in my opinion, or one of the main reasons of this conflict, unfortunately. And that's why I say the invasion was provoked, whereas these European officials say it's unprovoked. But when you listen to this Finnish, right? The Finnish or this, I forget really. Kaya Kallas, when you listen to her, she's just telling you now bluntly that the defeat of Russia is a good thing, and this could lead into disintegration of Russia. This is their plan, and this is what they wish for. Is it going to happen? No. They're not going to win in Ukraine. I mean, and unfortunately for the Ukrainians, tens of thousands more will perish if Ukraine starts consistently and discriminately or indiscriminately bombing the Russian cities or depots or etc. It's just going to escalate. And the Ukrainians don't have the manpower, the equipment, the flow of the weaponry, and the money. They are dependent on foreign aid. They have become a banana republic, right? I'm saying this, and unfortunately, they are not independent. They are dependent on American aid. They are dependent on British aid. They are dependent on German aid. And once this aid dries or government shifts or a change happens in these countries, Ukraine will be a big mess. And Ukrainians should know this. If there are any Ukrainians watching this live streaming, call me whatever you want, I was more truthful to you since the beginning of this war, and I told you the best option for you, you're brothers with the Russians. I know you hate them now, probably, some of you, but you are brothers and sisters with the Russians. And this is an American engineered war since 2014 with the coup and how things have been developed after the coup against the ethnic Russians and the Russian-speaking people and the separation areas and the occupation of your country. Your country has been raped, right? So what is your solution now for this? Is your solution to continue the fight? I'm sure that you have relatives and people in Ukraine, and they can tell you how's the situation on the front lines with the manpower and the mobilization and the new mobilization laws. People are tired, right? And there is no way, just mathematically speaking, for Ukraine to bring more soldiers to the front line than the Russians. I mean, just mathematically, right? And equipment-wise, the Russians are able to produce 3 times more ammunition or artillery shells than the entire NATO countries. So they cannot... how are you going to win this war? In every sense, in every shape or form, unfortunately, you cannot win this war. So the best option is a peace treaty with Russia. And that's not going to happen now. The Russians do not accept it because they have given this chance in 2022 when the invasion started. And the Brits have blocked it and the Americans have blocked it. And now the Russians say, we don't want a peace agreement with Ukraine until this regime is gone, right? From the Russian point of view, they have the upper hand now over Ukraine. Unfortunately, this is how politics work. And unfortunately, Ukrainians are going to be the biggest loser of this conflict. So I hope more people could come to their senses. And I'm also sure they cannot do anything about it, even in Ukraine. There is no democracy, right? And the president tenure is over and he just stays because there is an emergency situation. Anyways, one of our commentators say, Vanessa Billy introduced me to you. She's a very kind and very good friend and colleague, and she's a brilliant journalist. Ask Eva Bartlett to come to your show. Okay, dear, I will tell her. Let's see if she can come next week or the week after. I also know Eva for a long time. She's a brilliant journalist. She was in Syria many times with Eva Bartlett and Vanessa Billy. They have done a great work on Syria as well. So this was today's live streaming. I cannot promise you, but tomorrow might Anya Parampil, the wife of Max Blumenthal, could come to Syriana Analysis to discuss her new book, which is about Venezuela. And she just released her book, and I would like to discuss Venezuela. What is the Chavista Revolution? What preceded the Chavista Revolution in Venezuela? What are the pillars of the Chavista Revolution, and why the Venezuelans are poor despite the huge energy resources? Why the United States tried to coup Chavez and after him his successor multiple times and they failed. We're going to discuss these cases. I just sent her an invitation. I'm just waiting for a confirmation for 100%. I will declare that tomorrow for sure if she is going to come, guys. So stay tuned for that. If you're not subscriber, please subscribe. 60% of the viewers of this channel are not subscribers. That would be great help to me if you subscribe. The bigger this channel gets, the bigger names I can also invite. This is live. This is how it works. So I would really appreciate it if you subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends. And if you like to support this work, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow on Friday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.